emanating and expressing joy in the Black body is like not only important, it's just like paramount. It's like what we're here to do on this planet. I think sometimes we get a little lost and confused, and it's like our duty to find it.
Hi, welcome to Town Hall, a Black queer podcast, the podcast where we journey through a theme by sharing stories, music, poetry, and art of varying depth and hilarity. And today's episode is joy. Pep, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being the slums and 10 being euphoric, where is your joy today?
Today it's like probably about a 5, but I think that changes in the moment. Like when we were, that can it can be up to 10 after a funny joke. You know what I mean?
Yeah, you did have some tech issues. Tech issues can baby. Let me tell you right now. If you want to catch me on a bad mood, catch me when the Wi-Fi won't work. I'm telling you right now. There have been moments in my life where I remember thinking to myself, if I want to ruin when I had a roommate, I was like, if you want to ruin your roommate's day, I would go before leaving the house. I would unplug the Wi-Fi router and then whisper in his ear while he's sleeping. Just whisper, Comcast, and then just leave the house.
How long ago was that?
This is, do you remember Honey in the Bronx?
Was that your roommate?
Anyway, yeah, this was like 10 years ago, maybe.
And so, what was wrong with the Wi-Fi? Like she didn't have the right.
No, I'm saying like if you wake up and the Wi-Fi is not working, or if you wake up and you can't get your phone to connect to a bip bop boop, or if you can't get this to do that, it will. And that's what I was saying. You just you right before we started, you were having a tech issue, and the thing is, like, technology, you're looking, you're like, this is plugged into that, that's plugged into this is connected to that. Why aren't the things working? And then it's like one little.
It wasn't
thing,
even. Sometimes it's just a gremlin. Today it was a gremlin.
Not the gremlin. Do you ever see little gremlins in your apartment?
Like mice or something?
No, like you never seen a little gremlin in your house.
No,
out of the corner of your eye.
You never bitch.
Okay, wait. You have never just been in your home.
Have you seen a gremlin in my house?
Like, no, and I've seen it in my house. Like I just see out of the corner of my eye, like something like runs, but it's like always like right out of my field of vision. No. Like it's like counter height. Like it'll be like behind it'll be like at the height of a counter, or it'll be like it's always like right above a tabletop.
No,
or something.
I've never seen a gremlin running around. Shut the hell up.
Well, no. In the comments, y'all comment below. Have you ever seen a little gremlin out of the corner of your eye? They move your remote. They if you can't find
what is this Christian Walker gaslighting?
There have been times where I will think to myself, I can't find my shoes. And I'm like, I know I didn't take off one shoe and walk to the other room and take off the other shoe. Whose shoes are not right next to each other? So if one of my shoes is missing, the little gremlin took the shoe and he moved it.
Okay. I mean, yes, it feels like gremlins are moving things around. They definitely like to do things in technology. My gremlins are in my computer.
See, that's why you can't see them, because your gremlins are in the computer. Mine are making sure that I am never organized. And one thing I tell you, it is definitely, if you've been in my house and it's messy, it is not me.
It's the gremlin.
It's the and that feels fair for me to be able to say on the internet today. If you've ever been in my house and it was messy, that had practically nothing to do with me.
It's not.
Have you seen any good movies or plays lately?
I did. I just went and saw Oppenheimer.
How was it?
It was extremely long.
The review. It was long.
It was extremely long. It was like over 3 hours.
I've not seen Oppenheimer yet. Oh my God.
I didn't back in the day. I just didn't know that it was going to be 3 hours. I guess you have to like stop and look. I have to stop assuming. This are the two things about the movies I have to stop assuming. I have to stop assuming that movies ever start at 8:00, because they don't. They start at 6 and they start at 9 all across the country. You are not going to see an 8 p.m. showing pretty much, unless it's like a private showing or something like that. They just don't start at 8:00.
You're thinking the theater. The theater's at 8:00.
Theaters start at 8:00. Nowadays, theaters start at 7:00. But nothing
Huh?
starts at 9 o'clock. They just don't do it. That's the first thing. The second thing is I have to stop assuming that a movie's going to be 2 hours worth of time commitment, and that like maybe an hour, 2.5 hours, whatever you're leaving the theater. If you leave, if you're thinking you're going to an 8 o'clock movie and it should be out by 10, you are wrong. If you're going to a movie, it's starting at 6 or 9, but you're not going to be out. If it starts at 6, you're not going to be out at 8. You're going to be out at 11:30 from the credits rolling if you go to see Oppenheimer. And darling, around that 2.5 hour mark, I started looking around and I looked over at my friend who suggested the movie, and I was like, angry.
No,
It wasn't joy. Sorry.
yeah. If I go to a movie and it ends tomorrow, we have a problem. I need to talk to a manager. I need to talk to I need to speak to the director of this film, please.
Now there are some movies where you go and you like, wow, like Joan
of Arc.
Joan River movie. It wasn't 3 hours, but I could have sat and I felt when it ended, I was like, I'd like to see the Joan Rivers documentary that came out years ago, right after she died.
Oh, Piece of Work. No, Piece of Work. Yeah, Piece of Work.
That could have been longer. I would have gladly sat for more of that because I was like, oh my gosh, it's over already. So I guess there are, and that wasn't 3 hours, but I'm just saying, like, there are some movies where you're like, wow, I can't believe it's over already. And there are, I'm sure, some 3 hour movies that I sat through and then I was like, it didn't feel like 3 hours. It was totally cool. But something about this Oppenheimer, like it felt, longer than 3 hours.
Piece of Work ran. That can't be correct. I don't know. This says 10 minutes. That's clearly not correct.
The running time was not 10 minutes.
Yeah, I Googled Piece of Work runtime, and I've obviously not found. Maybe Joan Rivers wasn't called Piece of Work. I thought it was called Piece of Work. Piece of Work documentary. It was Joan Rivers documentary called Piece of Work, right?
Yes, Joan Rivers.
Yeah, it was
one documentary about her.
Yeah, it was called.
I can remember.
No, but I remember what was it called? A Piece of Work. Yeah, it was called A Piece of Work, and the runtime. Well, okay. Let's spend the next 20 minutes googling the runtime. It's like 1 hour 24 minutes. Yeah, that is very, very long for a movie. I recently went to go see a musical movie, A24's first musical movie,
which
was written by some friends. It's called Dix the Musical. It's actually written by some friends of mine, and it's Megan Thee Stallion's first feature film.
Wow. Oh, we didn't talk about on the last thing as the Tory Lanez. Anyway, we'll talk about this.
You want to talk about joy?
This is joy. This is joy. This is joy. You're bringing me joy.
When I will say, when Tory Lanez got sentenced, that was my first time ever. I sound like a Trump supporter. I was like, 4 more years. I was like, 4 more years.
Yeah.
But yeah, Tory Lanez got sentenced to 10 years for his egregious and violent crimes against Grammy award-winning college graduate and
icon.
and baddie and a hot girl baddie, Megan Thee Stallion, which is so funny to me because Megan's such an interesting woman. I'm really she's fun. She's a person that's really fun to follow her career and be a fan of her. You get to really enjoy everything from her like early mixtapes to her graduating from college as a health administrator. She has a degree in like health administration, to her Grammy Award wins. To she's really a fun person to be a fan of. So big shout out to Megan Thee Stallion. I'm glad that she got some justice.
I mean, in other news, honestly, I am that is deserving of a full moment because she has been dragged. They both probably received the type of attention that they weren't expecting when getting ready to leave that day. And so, but it is the misogynoir that is rolling out across all of the internet waves and the rooms of shade all over is definitely wild. And it does feel like we Black folks in general are caught between this like paradox of like, wanting to dismantle the systems of oppression and addressing, not even necessarily wanting to, calling out the systems of oppression and fighting back against the systems of oppression, but not willing to, but simultaneously upholding those same systems of oppression. Like it just feels, you know, wild to me that we would do something that feels like it's akin to, if I could zap us back to the 18 or the 16, 17, 1800s, you know, if the master,
Why
if
would
we're
you ever zap us
enslaved,
back to the 18? Why would
to
you
talk about it in
ever
those terms,
zap us?
if okay, well, to talk about it in the terms of the 1960s, I don't know, you know, if the police are using fire hoses on us or beating us, or you know, the teacher in the class is like, you know, only hitting the black children with the ruler, fighting back against that teacher, fighting back against those police officers, and like fighting back and protesting and fighting back, but then turning around and saying, you know, we need to work within their system, you know, a system that was never built to benefit us, essentially, and like respecting, like giving an overabundance of respect onto the politicians that uphold, you know, the anti-voting laws. The you know, I'm talking a little bit all over the place, but it just feels really, really to talk about police brutality and to talk about how the system is against Black men, which it is, but then talk about how, you know, Black women, to talk about how Black women should be respected in certain circles, when talking about trans women, and how saying that trans women are, you know, somehow, you know, an affront to the existence of cisgender Black women, but then go around and say, when a Black woman, you know, we need to respect and protect all Black women from trans women. But then when a Black woman gets shot by a Black man, shut the fuck up, bitch. You're lying. You know, like, I just can't wrap my head around it.
Well, there is certainly a level of cognitive dissonance that allows you to engage in that kind of rhetoric. But I want to steer us back towards
Okay,
some
let's talk about the
joy,
joy. We got
because
into it. I was
today
joyous
is about
watching Alabama, the folks in Alabama who were trying to dock and probably paid money to be on the ship, the Harriet, trying to dock when a
the
pontoon,
Harriet too.
the Harriet too, when the pontoon boat was
Harriet too, man.
blocking them, and the pontoon boat had the nerve. That is the first time white folks have ever stopped a ship of Black folks from pulling into that port.
They were like, if we ain't making money off of them, they can't dock here. If we can't sell them, they can't dock. I'll tell you that right now.
That was the
If
first time ever that white folks have been like,
they
not
get off
here.
that,
Do not park that boat.
they said,
We don't
God
want
damn
them
it, if
Black
the
to get off that
chains are
boat.
gold and around their neck, they can't get off. The chains got to be metal and around their ankles, or they can't dock here.
Girl, where was that energy?
No.
Anyway.
Yeah, the Alabama Brawl, the Montgomery Ball, the Alabama Slammer, it has been given several many names. And as I said before, you know, Black people were manifesting out of the sky, falling from the sky, coming out of the ground, coming from alternate universes. I mean,
white folks turning
turning into Black girl, Swim Jones,
Aquaman.
I would have learned to swim on the spot and been like, I'm coming.
I can swim.
And I can't even swim. I would be like, what is this? What are the ancestors taking over?
The ancestors were taking
now?
over. The ancestors. It was a glorious display of coordination amongst people who obviously didn't know each other. And
but they knew each other in spirit.
Well, you know what? Like, I think that they were, I don't know, but I can tell you when I first started to watch that video, I was like, remember, not to bring it there, but I'm bringing it there a little bit. When the video that you and I, the videos that we were all watching, especially in our lives, but especially that were like coming, you know, rising to a fever pitch in 2020, 2018, 2019, 2020, where we were seeing Black men brutalized, and in many cases killed by police officers. you'd watch that video or it would come across your screen and you're like, oh no, not this. And I thought for a minute that's what this video of this Alabama slam up was going to be. Was that.
Yeah.
And that feeling of like, oh my God, that pit that in your stomach and in, of all of this. And to see it come, what you want when you're watching those videos is for the person not to get killed, not to get shot, for them to fight back in a way that they can escape. I'd rather them escape and run than get shot on video, or get shot, period. But like seeing that all play out, you feel so hopeless, and you hope that they can. And then this video was the one. This was like
delivers.
It
well,
delivers.
What happens is spoiler alert for the movie Django Unchained. This is your spoiler alert. So at the end of if you're watching Django Unchained, you're just watching Black people get brutalized and brutalized and brutalized and brutalized and brutalized, and then at the very end, Jamie Foxx gets to get back at all
of them,
the white people. And that is it gives you a sense of release. You know what I mean? I do wish the final fight hadn't been between two Black people, because the final one was at Samuel L. Jackson. I was like, why did the final fight? But also that's Tarantino.
He's like, but
that's Tarantino for you.
Yeah. Although I did love Hateful Eight. That's a different conversation.
I mean, Tarantino makes some good films. I've heard he's problematic, but I don't really know much about.
I mean, you don't even have to know him personally.
Apparently, he almost killed. Apparently, he almost killed Uma Thurman by making her do something crazy. He was like, "No, trust me," and she almost got hurt during Kill Bill. But I don't know. Don't actually take that with a grain of salt, because I don't know anything. I don't know if what I said is true at all. But what I do know is we have some really great stories today that we're gonna it's focusing around Black joy and happiness that we're going to be able to share with you all today. You ready to get started, Pep?
I sure am. Okay, on that note, let us shine our light of queer Black joy on our very first contributor today. Joining us is Ezra, who is a gender, race, and Indigenous Studies student and speaks very fabulously on the joy of discovering his non-binary masc identified self, and is a huge fan of Bob, who inspired him to embrace his gender fluidity. This is Ezra.
My name is Ezra Ongongo. I go by E or Ezra. I chose the name Ezra partially kind of out of nostalgic reasons. So my mom I was raised pretty Christian, and my mom was really fond of old school biblical names and stuff, but she gave me and my sister pretty African names. She was born with a super white name, her name is Barbara Jane, so I think she was trying to make up for that. And yeah, so when I was picking a name for myself, my mom was really supportive of my journey, and as I started to discover my gender identity, a little more than she was supportive of my sexuality when I was younger. So I wanted to kind of honor her a little bit, especially because I was raised by a single mom. So I just wanted to pick something I thought she would like, and at the same time that I would like. And I've always really liked the name Ezra. I like how it sounds, I like how it looks, and I like that he was a leader in the Bible. I'm trying to become more of a leader in the things I do, or take more of that responsibility. So I like that name for my adult life, and for me as the man I want to be. Sexuality and gender-wise, I identify as a bisexual, non-binary person. I use he, they, and she pronouns, less she, but I'm open to most pronouns. I identify more as transmasculine though, or more masculine leaning. And I feel like that was really hard for my mom growing up. I always, especially when I was younger, it was a little more binary. I was definitely more of a masculine person when I was younger, I feel. And before I started to get back in touch with my femininity. So I feel like that was a little hard for her, at least to my family. I didn't actually want to come out in general. It had just come out when I was about 15. But in general, I didn't want to, because I felt like it was just another burden, another struggle to add. We're already Black. I'm a first generation immigrant. My mom was born in Canada, but she grew up in Salone in Sierra Leone with my grandparents. I remember when I'd been outed to her, because I was outed actually by members of the church. They had found my social media, and they told her about it, and she got really upset, which she now says was just because my grandmother was visiting, and she was really big on tradition, and she was really upset. So my mom kind of fed into that. She made me like delete all my social media. It was a pretty hard time. I wasn't allowed to like really see any of my friends, of my newer friends, because she knew a lot of them were queer. But that only lasted maybe like a week. And then my uncle talked to her, and his son had just come out as gay. He's literally like a couple, like quite a bit older than her. He handed me like a vodka Fanta. I was like 15. He handed me a vodka Fanta. He's like, I'm going to go talk to your mom. And he just pulled her aside at like a family event and just let her know, like, hey, you can't hate your kid for being gay, I guess. I don't know what he said, but it worked. I think she kind of thought about it, and then she kind of like cried to me, and she was like, you can do whatever you want. Like, I love you anyway. Like, it's not a sin. Like, so she kind of changed her mind. But then she was still like, but you're a girl. Like, but you're a woman. Like, you can't really change that. And I think that was basically just her mind changed on its own. Like that actually strained our relationship when I was like 17, 18, 19, like as I left for university and stuff. I wasn't the closest with my mother. I didn't plan to have her like as a big part of my life. And I was just obviously hurt from there were a lot of other things going on in childhood too. I went through quite a bit of childhood trauma with other parts of my young life. But with my mom, I feel like her mind just changed on what gender meant. And she's always been a bit of a butch woman. She's always been a bit of a woman who does things in her own way, who doesn't try to conform to femininity standards, especially white femininity standards. She, I think, changed her view on gender probably around like 2017, 2018, 2019 times. So by the time I came out as trans to her, she was very supportive, and she actually had said she kind of knew, like she could kind of tell since I was a kid. So that was interesting because with my sexuality, she'd been like really surprised. Like she'd kind of been like, what? Like I had no idea. But with my gender, she was kind of like, yeah, kind of tell you were a little boy. Like, so that was interesting to me. Yeah, so now we're really close. She's definitely a big supporter of mine. I remember my grandparents, it was Christmas of 2020 or 2021, and we were like video chatting with my grandparents, and they were all calling me by my dead name. And my whole family was. We were on the call with like 30 of my family members, and the whole family was calling me my dead name, which I don't fight them. A lot of them are like super Christians, so I'm just scared. I don't want to get in the fire. I don't want to start the fight. But my mom was literally like getting so pissed off, but it was like cute. Like it was like nice. Like she was like, his name is Ezra. His name is Ezra. Like she's just so like, I don't want to say like bitchy about it, but she's very like, she's very like specific. Like even with my dad, like when my dad was dead naming me just because I hadn't even told him. Like he lives in Kenya with my half sisters, and I hadn't even told him about my name. And like my mom was getting so stressed because he was calling me my dead name, and she's like, do you not know he is Ezra? Like, and that has been just sweet. Like, and every time, like, my grandpa will always make fun of me or roast me for like my short hair, and my mom will always be like, you have short hair, you're balding. Like, she literally will always be like, no, like, it feels like she's writing for me harder than I'm writing for myself when it comes to it. So I'm just like really thankful for that, because then I don't have to say it, and then I get to be non-confrontational, but it still gets to be done. I am a student, so gender-wise, that's all good. I'm not sure what I'm going to do with it yet. I'm kind of just enjoying my degree, but I study gender studies, like feminism, etc., Indigenous studies, and so that I think she's very proud of. I was a victim of a crime a couple of months ago, like in my field of work. I've gone through some trauma as an adult, obviously, and I'm still pretty young. So obviously like a little more than I would have liked to. But in terms of my identity, from the moment I like let myself know that I was pretty sure that I was masculine leaning, even just that, like allowing myself to be masculine, in my imagining of what masculinity meant, like that kind of changed my whole world, because I'd always felt really unsure of myself, and especially entering adulthood, performing hyperfemininity while not feeling comfortable in it. I was really scared to change, or I was scared I would lose everything. Like my current partner started dating me right at that time, and they're also non-binary, but they came out even later than me. So that was also a stress, because I wanted to be like the right person for them in terms of like being there for their gender journey, but I still was like a ways away from understanding myself. But I would say like now that at like 22, 23, these last couple years, I turned 24 like next month. And I would say I feel very strong in who I am, especially Ezra, like as the person, aside from the pronouns, aside from what my body looks like. I think I'm finally starting to internalize that my body is my body, and it doesn't need to impede me. I think that's what sucks about misogyny is like growing up with that, especially as a Black female, you're told that you'll either be like hyper fetishized or you'll be ignored. Like there's no in between. And I feel like it's been really great for me finding that I can exist in betweens, like in between spaces. And that is definitely a source of joy. And like the gender euphoria I feel from just being able to talk how I want to talk. And for me, for example, I always had a deep voice and I always hated it because it made me seem less feminine when like that was what I had to ascribe to. But then now that I'm older and I get to know my own identity for myself, it's not chosen by anyone else. I'm happy with my voice. I like that I have a semi-deep voice for a female. I think it helps me feel good in my androgyny. It helps me feel gender euphoric, even just speaking. Like I don't feel like I have to modulate my voice too much. So I enjoy that. And I really love, like, I've just been really happy about like clothes and stuff. Like there's things I never thought I'd feel comfortable doing in terms of like, I don't bind my chest. I used to bind my chest and now I'm trying not to, but I am thinking of getting on hormones, but I am thinking of leaving my chest or leaving my breasts. And that was really like a source of like euphoria for me. Yeah. To feel comfortable with a female presenting body while being trans masc or while being masculine leaning. I've been feeling really proud of that, just because a lot of like, if you look at like anything like early gender theory, like a lot of it talks about like the construction of gender and the fact that like a body doesn't have an innate gender. We place that upon it. Even sex is pretty mutable if you look at like different sexual characteristics that can exist. Like if you consider intersex people, for example. So I have been feeling really great and really joyful about the fact that I am enjoying my body. And especially as someone who used to like starve themselves, I used to be anorexic for about 5 years of my life because of my dysphoria, because I felt that I looked too feminine. So it's been nice being able to let go of that and decide that no matter what other people think, I know who I am. I know what makes me a man. I know what makes me a woman when I feel like a woman. And I know that my body can be accepted either way. And that has been a source of great joy. When I was about like 5 or 6, I was at the park and I used to have dreads when I was a kid. My mom used to be a dreadhead. I used to have like dreads and they were pretty short at the time. So I'd get mistaken for a little boy a lot. And we were at the park and a little girl ran up to me, like a girl about my age. And she's like, "You're hot, like you're cute." Like, and I was like 5 or 6 and I was literally just like, oh my gosh, like, wow, like I'm a bad bitch. Like I felt so cool. Like, and I remember I was like, yeah, why? Like at first when I was growing up, I was like, okay, like when I started watching porn, etc., I was like, okay, I'm clearly into women. So I was like, okay, maybe I'm just into women. Like maybe I'm just lesbian, like, or sapphic leaning or just bisexual in general. But then like that was kind of hit again when I was on Molly when I was about 19. I basically had this whole like awareness moment about a trauma that had happened to me. And I realized that I'd been scared of like pursuing masculinity because of like what males had done to me in my life. So I was scared to like give into that or become like that. And basically it was like once I was on Molly with my partner and we were just like talking and they had just like started to come into their femininity too. They were born males. So they had just started to like dabble with their femininity, and also their masculinity is really cool to me. Like I like the way they present as a man, as like their masculine side. So they've always been like, I've known them since we were 13. So like they've always been like an inspiration of like the type of guy I would like to be. And yeah, I remember we were just on Molly and I just like felt like a shift in me. And I just like stopped hyper. I used to always like raise the tone of my voice to make it like lighter. Yeah, I guess like modulating. I don't know why I would do that, but I feel like it was like when I was younger, my voice was made fun of. So I was like, okay, I gotta sound like feminine and pretty. And yeah, so I stopped doing that. And my partner was like, whoa, I've never heard you like talk like that or like just use your actual like way of talking. And I was just like sitting more comfortably. Like it felt like a full body change. Like, and that, yeah, obviously while on Molly was pretty euphoric. I felt really like the joy was like one I just thought I'd never have. Like I didn't think I'd ever be able to be masculine and be loved. I think that was another thing that was stopping me, like especially because I don't have a penis. Like I'm not a like typical like AMAB male. So I really didn't think that I would be loved if I were to explore my masculinity, especially by a male, even if that male were bisexual. Like, I thought that I would lose any like part of me that inspires people or makes people want to be with me if I didn't have that. So to be able to just relax, and even when I told my friends and they were all like, yeah, like that totally makes sense. And also you look great. Like we've always thought you were very butch. So it was really nice to like have that validated. To me, masculinity that I least aspire to be like is quiet confidence. I really like the idea of like, I always hate to say it, but like moving in silence. Like I like a quiet confidence with presentation, and I guess that could be feminine or masculine. It's hard for me as someone who studies gender because I don't want to say like something's masculine or feminine, but I guess I would say for me that like masculinity is quiet confidence. It's also being able to take up space and not be scared, which obviously can also be feminine. But for me, it's not being scared to not have to cater or not have to feel like you have to be constantly someone's emotional labor. Like it's being able to balance your labor that's like you're doing to make people feel comfortable with also like kind of demanding respect yourself. And those are things I struggled with growing up. So I feel like it's all the things I basically just aspire to be as a human. And for me, that to me feels like masculinity because that makes me feel like I'm empowered. It makes me feel like I'm the man I want to be. And I would also say not being afraid to be kind or gentle, like being able to not always use like brute force, if never using brute force, actually, I would say like, to me, it's about kindness and care and allowing that care to be present, even when you're being assertive or even when you're being someone who's taking charge and those typical masculine roles or what is seen as typically masculine. Like the kindness is what really inspires me. And I really like in my masculinity and what I've tried to cultivate in myself is to be kind, but to be confident and to always like respect yourself as well as respecting others. Because I feel like there's only so much respecting others you can do that won't be detrimental if you don't respect yourself. So I feel like that's really important. And loving yourself, which for my man or woman side, like I'm trying to work on loving myself. I have bipolar, I have a couple mental illnesses, and I've struggled with self-love in my life, struggled with self-harm and things like that, and suicidality. And so loving myself is kind of not even like an option. Like it feels like it's a necessity. And I feel like it's necessary in my masculinity to not base also that masculinity off anyone else. Like I feel like I should be basing my masculinity on only people who inspire me and then what I want out of the way I'm presenting. Like I don't want to feel too much like, oh, this is the way to be a man, or this is the way, if you want to be a woman, this is how to be a woman. Like I want to feel that it's open to me to choose, but that I can have strong leaders out there or people who I can look to. And like obviously, like that's why I was really excited to talk to y'all, because Bob has especially been that for me. As I came into terms with my non-binary identity, I actually didn't even know that he was gender fluid or part identified as he and she. But like I followed like obviously Drag Race, but I've just known about Bob the Drag Queen since I was like 14, and now I'm about to be 24. So yeah, he definitely has done a lot for me in terms of realizing that I can be a man, but not be scared to still be cunt, still be what I want to be. I don't have to like lose my flavor. I was so excited when I heard that Peppermint and Bob were doing a podcast. I love Peppermint too. Like she literally, like I remember watching her journey at the beginning and then hearing that she'd been a legend forever, like knowing that her career had, before I was even born. So it was really cool just seeing her continue the longevity she's had. And similar with Bob, I feel like he's leading to that same longevity and has had longevity. And yeah, so I really love that they chose to do a podcast for Black queer stuff. Like I really love that that was something that was done. I've been like hoping for little like pieces of it in anything I listen to. Like I love podcasts, so I'm always like hoping for pieces of like Black queer stuff or like anything about like our issues or anything that we go through. So it was just so cool to see like something so specific, like what would seem niche, I guess, but it's like specifically in my niche of who I am. So I'm really grateful to be here and I'm really thankful for the opportunity. I started like collaging in the last couple of years and then I started painting, which I always didn't think I would be able to really do or I was scared I would be bad at. I grew up doing music and like grew up singing and like playing instruments, but I didn't think I'd be a good painter. So it's been really cool learning how to paint and learning different techniques and like getting better at that. And what's cool is seeing my own style develop. So it's nice to see like my own artistic voice being developed, even with the music I'm writing, like compared to the stuff I'd write when I was like a kid. The stuff that I've written now, especially that I'm like working with my partner, it's nice also having a partner who does music. So we're like working on an album right now and it's been really nice, like just being able to see my own voice and not feel like it's cringy, like not feel like it sounds horrible. Like it's really cool.
That was so sweet. Pep, sometimes it occurs to me that this is going to sound egotistical, but I've been accused before. One day you and I are going to, someone's going to be like talking about us in a classroom or something, which is so wild to think about. And I've always said, Pep is Black history. She's Black and she's history. No, I'm kidding. No, Pep is Black history. No, I'm kidding. No, Pep is Black history. Pep has set many a milestone and broken many a ground so that queer people, Black trans people, Black gender non-conforming people can walk behind you in the road you've trudged.
And they better stay behind me, darling. Don't you? No, that's pulling very Blair White. Never mind. We won't even go there.
What Blair White say?
This is not the name to mention on this podcast. Well, yeah, you never know. You never know the impact and influence that you have on people, even if they're not famous or not in TV or entertainment. Like thinking back to like teachers that I've had who've said, there was I was really inspired in a way by John Amos, who was the father on Good Times, and I went and saw a lecture of his when I was like 10 years old. My mom, who worked at the college that he was speaking at, he came to speak at the college my mom worked at, really. He said some stuff about being a professional actor that like really resonated with me. And I think as part of the reason why I feel so content and in my joy today, like I feel like I've already made it. I'm happy. Even if like my apartment, I'm still, even if I'm living in a small apartment or I don't have this or this and that, like these are things that I'd like to change or like things I'd like to go do. But like overall, I feel great. And I feel like I've done what I'm here to do. And it's anything else is extra. And I think that has a lot to do with him really inspiring me at that point. He was like, if you can earn a living doing the job that you enjoy, then you are a professional, whatever your thing is. And so that's rung true to like I made a note of that when I was like 10. And then when I moved to New York and became a drag entertainer and was able to pay my bills and pay my rent just doing that, I was like, oh, I did it. I'm done. Not that I'm done, but like, I'm happy,
I've had it.
I've had it. I'm over it. Anyway, yeah.
No, that is amazing. Back before you peppermint, back when you were just a little mini mint. I love that you had that revelation. So I want to continue our stories of joy with our next contributor, who is he's a LA based actor and writer, and just like most of us who live in LA or New York City, you just kind of you're not from there. You end up in LA.
Some people are.
Where you end up in New York. But he's an actor. And you may have seen him in some things. You can. I'm Union Strong. You can go look up things yourself. You can Google his name and see what projects he's in. So let's hear from DK.
I'm DK Uzoukwu. I'm an actor / writer based in LA. I've been living here for about 13 years, hustling and grinding, just doing the actor thing. Lots of auditions, lots of survival jobs. I was a taxi starter at LAX. That was my first ever job in LA. My shifts were from 4:30 p.m. to 1 a.m. every day, from Tuesday to Sunday. Yeah, my day off was a Monday, so I got to have Mondays off, and don't know what I did with those. Then I went into catering, and that was the majority of my survival job life up until, the pandemic, honestly, shifted everything. Now I'm here. I have a job that I can't talk about because I'm on strike. And so, yes, very blessed, very happy, very lucky. But, I worked hard, and I'm happy that my hard work paid off, and that, staying true to myself ended up working out for me in the long run, because there was a time when I didn't feel like I could be myself in order to get to be in this industry. I've known since I was about like 9 or 10 that I was queer. I didn't really um, accept that about myself. I guess I had to come out to myself. Once I moved to LA, like I kind of like tried to hide it for a long time, tried to pray it away, tried to date girls, and all the things that people who aren't comfortable with themselves do. And I think being in LA forced me, one, I was away from my family who are all on the East Coast. So I was by myself. I didn't have very many friends out here. And I was forced to really like just be by myself for the first time in my life and reckon with my sexuality. And that was a hard thing to do, because it's like trying to decide to eat bread for the first time. It's like, well, there's so many people that eat bread on the internet. Like I watch them do it, and then it looks good to them, but like I think it'll make me feel good. But no, where I'm from, we don't do bread like that. Like that's not what we do. And people look down on me for eating bread. Like I grew up in Maryland. Parents are Nigerian. So, immigrant household, firstborn, all that. And I basically was like, since being the firstborn, I also had to like be the leader of the group. There's 5 of us, um, 5 kids. I have 4 siblings, and I had to really be the example. And, that pressure to be the first to do anything in this life, in your family's life, is like a lot. But I just knew like I didn't want to do the things that my parents wanted me to do. But I also knew like I also was different than what they wanted me to be. I didn't see myself getting married to a girl or dating. And I tried. I gave it a good college try. Look, I fell in love. I fell in love with multiple girls, and because that's what I thought I wanted. I feel like I tried to fulfill this image of what my parents or whomever around me thought of me. I wanted to be what they thought I could be. And I wanted to be what I thought I could be, because I felt like that was a better alternative than what I knew deep inside I actually was. And so, yeah, I tried to date girls. I tried to be in relationships with them. And for whatever reason, it never worked out. So I'm someone who, again, because of discovery and all that, I came to my sexuality late in life, which means I lost my virginity late in life. Um, the first time I did, though, was with a guy. And that was a discovery of joy in and of itself. I was like, wow, this feels normal. This feels like, I don't know what I was scared of before. Like it felt right. It was so joyful that I called one of my best friends, who's a guy straight, from college, and I was like, "Yo, guess what I just did?" And he was very happy for me. I mean, well, there's so many thoughts that go through your mind when you do something that you've been conditioned to believe is against God. And I'm Christian. I still believe. I still go to church. Um, Hello. Open this upside down. Oops. Um, but I honestly felt like I was finally aligned with the path God had set for me. And I think like it might be very controversial to say this, but like there's this idea that everyone has this cross to bear, right? This burden to bear in life. And I remember being in church one time and hearing a Pentecostal preacher say this. And I'm very confident that, if she knew that I was gay, she would have cast me out the church. Um, but she said something that really spoke to me. And that was like, we all have our burdens to bear, whether that is like, an ailment or some sort of like identity that is frowned upon, whatever the case may be. And at that point I wasn't out yet, but I realized that maybe being gay in this world was my cross to bear. And I didn't ask for it. I didn't I tried all I could to deny it. I tried to pray it away. I tried to do all of the things. I used to think when I was a kid, I used to think like, oh, by 25, this will go away. So maybe I'll just get through it. I thought by college it would go away. And I thought by like 15 it would go away. Like I had always assumed that this was something I believed what people said, like, oh, this is something that you grow out of. And it wasn't the case at all. And, in that moment I realized maybe this is my cross to bear. Um, but it doesn't have to be a burden. It just has to be, you know, it's a thing that God made me. And if I'm supposed to walk this path in this identity, then I'm going to do it with my head held high. And I think there is sort of like a spiritual relief when you finally accept the things about you that you can't control and choose to walk in that as opposed to walk in fear of it. I realized like all of the times I was jealous of guys who like teenagers my age who had like the B2Ks and the ushers and stuff. I was like, oh wait, I actually was attracted to them? Damn. What? Ah. I wanted to be Usher, and there was nothing wrong in saying that. There was nothing wrong in saying that, but I had to go follow the mindset that like, oh, to like that is wrong and or whatever, or to like Xena or Spice Girls is somehow gayer than liking wrestling, which is just a bunch of men throwing people around. What does it feel like to be a working actor? It feels amazing. But I think it took a lot of work to get there. And I mean, when I say working actor, I mean like a working actor who is Black and queer and open about that. Like, you see my Instagram page, my Twitter page, there's a little rainbow flag next to my Nigerian flag, next to my American flag, next to my, cross. Like I'm open about who I am. And that took a lot of work to get there because, when I came into this industry, I was trying to be something that I thought the world wanted me to be. I wanted to be Will Smith meets Usher with us. And then I met this manager who was like my first manager in LA, but she offered that I was more Sidney Poitier. Like I didn't have a harder look. She was also very old Hollywood, very white. And so I had to take a lot of her, perceptions about me with a grain of salt, but I had to teach myself how to do that. She did not know I was queer. That I did not tell. I don't think I had a conversation about me being queer until my current manager, who I met 2 years ago. After I did a Hillman grad showcase, and I think that showcase was the pivotal moment for me. This is like 10 years into the industry now. At that point, I was sort of like open about me being gay, but I wasn't like actively saying, "Oh, I'm a queer actor" or whatever. And I don't say that in my job. Yeah, it's just like I'm an actor, but it wasn't so tied to my identity and the way people saw me. And it isn't really now. I just wanted there to be an openness about it and a clarity about that that I didn't really even have or even I never ever saw myself saying like, oh, I'm DK and I'm gay, like to a room full of people. That 10 years ago, hell no. doing the showcase itself, getting into the program was like the hard part. The questions that they asked to like essay questions that they have in the application to get into the mentorship program. Basically, they were asking me questions about my identity. And that was the first time I actually felt empowered enough to tell my story in a very specific way. And then also sort of like long view, speak on what I hoped my legacy would be. Like, how would I want to change the industry? And there are a couple other moments where I was able to sort of like realize that as I was actively working and pursuing this craft, I was also leaving a legacy, even though I didn't know it, because I thought it was just like, I'm writing a podcast for Issa Rae here, or I'm doing this like co-star part in this job here. No one really sees that though. It's just like, okay, whatever. Um, but you don't really know the impact you're making until someone walks up to you and says, "Hey, I listened to that podcast by Issa Rae, and I just love the fact that you're gay and you were on that writing team, and I loved your work, and you inspired me to pursue this industry, and now I'm here thanks to like in part to you." Um, and so having that experience and then being able to apply to this mentorship program and really own that part of myself made me realize like there's power in my identity. Um, and I went into that mentorship program knowing that I wanted something concrete out of it. Um, Not a job or whatever, but just sort of like a showcase to say, hey, this is who I am. This is the talent I have. Please work with me and let's make some magic happen. And I was lucky enough to find my manager, Elevate Entertainment. We had a frank conversation about the things that I wanted to do and things I didn't want to do. I didn't want to be focused on like looks and all that stuff. I just wanted to do good work and audition for great parts that fit all kinds of parameters. And to their credit, they hustled their asses off. 2022 was the year I don't think I've ever auditioned as much as I did that year. And it brought us to this year where I booked my first series regular. Um, and that all came from me finally accepting the power that I had in my own identity and not being afraid of it or afraid to use it. Um, and so, yeah, I think the person I was when I came here and the person I am now is just someone who was like, it's a complete 180. Um, I'm a lot less afraid of the what ifs. And I mean, I'm still sort of like, I have anxiety, blah, blah, blah. But I am definitely a stronger man than I was when I got here. I love empowering people or encouraging people to just say, fuck it, do it scared. That's a quote that my friend Bossy Igby uses a lot. But yeah, I think there's something about just sort of like seeing someone who's in need of a good like pep talk or whatever, but also sort of like pushing them to like think beyond their own limitations and just be like, listen, you can do this. Whatever it is that you are looking towards or working towards, there's literally nothing stopping you. It brings me joy because I know that it's helping people see beyond themselves, see beyond their limitations, and see beyond like the boxes that we put ourselves in. And I love when, you know, it works out for them. Like, I don't know. I like to think of myself as someone that people can look to and say, hey, that guy made me feel good about myself that day, and I'm really happy that I met him. Um, that's what I want to leave people with. And so yeah, anytime I can encourage people, that feels good to me, and that does bring me a lot of joy. I've seen a movie that's like really, really fantastic, like a good thriller, but like one that like sort of puts you in the seat or puts you in that world. Um, I'm all for it. That gets me hyped. When I was younger, I used to not be able to go to the movie theaters. My parents didn't really do movies like that. My first movie theater experience was Star Wars Episode 1. I was 13 years old. So late. And so I try not to miss an opportunity to go see a movie, whether with friends or by myself. But seeing a movie that inspires me, and not even like, it doesn't have to be about the subject matter. It's just about the idea of all of these pieces coming together to make this one unique story, that puts you in the world, that excites you, that's exhilarating. The music of it all. Like, I love experiencing a great film. Those are the kind of things that bring me joy, which is why I'm so blessed that I get to be a part of this industry. When I was a kid, a new episode of Xena Warrior Princess would bring me joy. Just coming up next on Xena Warrior Princess. Hercules will come before, but I was like, no, listen, we'll snooze through this one because, he ain't really doing nothing. But Xena was that girl and still is that girl. Still is. Yeah. So, yeah, I think that's where my love for TV and film came from. Stuff like that brings me joy. Joy should not be a privilege, and it isn't a privilege. It's a right. We all have the right to joy. We have to be the stewards of our own joy. As much as the world tries to take it away from us and remind us of all the crappy things that are happening to us, to the world, to people around us, it's like we are being told to live in a constant state of fear, and that is not healthy. And so, yeah, we have to operate in a mind frame of like, what can I do for DK that brings me joy today? That's something my therapist always says. She ends every session with like, so what are we going to do today to bring DK joy? We can't rely on the world to do it for us. I think that's the big thing. As much as we would want to, because it's all right, that's just not the way the world we live in works, right? So we have to cultivate it on our own. We have to cultivate it for ourselves. And we can cultivate it for other people too. Honestly, so one of my mentors in Hillman grad, Beza Dabu, on our last day, he gave this great speech, quote, something about the work of the artist and what we are meant to do with this gift that we have. We bring catharsis to people, we are the kind of people who help others process emotions, and that is necessary for a healthy civilization. We bring catharsis to people. And so when I talk about like going to the movies and feeling joy and feeling exhilarated, that's because the people who worked behind the scenes, who worked to create that piece of art, they're working in tandem together to create a catharsis for the audience. And that is necessary. That's healthy. And so that's our job, to create catharsis for people. And so as an actor, I can say, yeah, I feel like I have created joy for others by making them laugh. When I do, a sitcom or comedy or whatever, I think that's why I got into this industry. I wanted to create the same kind of exhilarating thrill, or be a part of that exhilarating thrill that I experienced when I would watch TV as a kid or as a young adult. And it's sort of like this relationship with the audience and the artist, where we get to create catharsis for people and they experience it, and we get to receive that energy from them. Even when Beyonce goes on stage, she's giving people joy by living her truth and doing the job she knows she was born to do. He saw the best in me when everyone else around could only see the worst in me. I wish I had a witness up in here. He saw the best in me. Oh, when everyone else around me could only see the worst in me.
I love DK. That was fantastic, and I am excited about. I know that DK was recently filming in Georgia with I think it was Savannah, Georgia, with Laverne Cox. Super excited about whatever they ended up doing.
How long have you known Laverne Cox?
About 25 years.
Work. Yeah, I think I met Laverne Cox at Lucky Chang's when I was doing plays. I used to write plays. I used to write parodies of plays and do them at Lucky Chang's
Plays at
years
Lucky
ago.
Chang's?
Yeah, I used to write parodies of plays, and I would cast them. This was when I was like in my early 20s. I would advertise in backstage, and then
You would
hold
advertise
auditions
it?
and do them at. Yeah, and to get actors to audition, and
Okay,
then we
no,
would
I
sell
got it. I
tickets,
got it.
and
I got it. I got it.
that's where I met Lila Lansing and Laverne Cox and Ruby and R.I.P. to Ruby, by the way. That's where I met Tobel and Tora Dress.
Okay,
and
everybody who worked at Lucky Chang's, these legends. Wait, we have to go.
Well, Pep said enough about them.
Are you?
Pep said they've had their flowers.
No. These are folks that we really, really. I mean, our listeners aren't going to know who these people are, but we should go back and circle back and do a historic retrospective on the staff of Lucky Chang's.
Maybe one day we'll do a whole episode about the New York City nightlife, because baby, New York City nightlife is a key. I cannot express how much my 12 and I was there for 12 years in the nightlife scene in New York City. It is a true key, honey. I mean, everything from murder mysteries to Grammy Award winning superstars have come out of the New York City nightlife scene.
It's true. It's true.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think we should move on to our next presenter, our next contributor, guest. Yeah.
Yeah. I think all of those work.
Okay. This is Danielle, who is a former English teacher. Speaking of teachers, and Danielle is now a young adult novelist.
What do you mean, speaking of teachers?
Well, I think I mentioned teacher when I was saying people who inspired me, but then I switched over to John Amos. But I think I said like teacher. Anyway.
I was like,
speaking of teachers. Daniela is a former English teacher and is now a young adult novelist. And their first novel, You Bet Your Heart, debuted in May of this year through Penguin Random House. So congrats on the book debut. And let's hear what Danielle has to say. This is the story that Danielle's going to tell us about Black Joy. All right, Danielle, take it away.
Hello, I'm Danielle Parker. This chapter of my life, I'm an author. I write young adult books, writing something that I've always loved to do. I've always wanted to do it. I'm like, yeah, let's just have all these chapters. Let's keep them funky. Like, I was a teacher before, and before that, like, I was a waitress for a really long time. Before that, I was, in a flute quartet, just doing all these random things. So no one in my family is really in the arts. So I never thought it was really possible for me. So I'd always write little stories. I'd have ideas and I would just kind of tuck them away. And then when I started teaching, I mentioned it to a friend. I was like, oh girl, we just got to write one book. We just have to do it. And she did it. And she published, and she just opened my eyes oh, I can do this. So then I got really serious and I was like, I want to do this. And then the universe was like, okay, girl, let's do it. And things just fell into place. And I published my first book this May. If the book didn't publish, I think that my big joyful moment of my adult life of this chapter outside of my son was finishing this project. Like I had started a lot of things and I had always been too afraid to finish them. Or I would just get distracted or just having too much fun in LA or just, I would put other things first. And when I finished this project, like when I typed the end, like I just like, transcended out of my body and I just a new happiness like overcame me. So I'm really thankful the book published, but if it hadn't, like even just completing that project was really meaningful to me because it showed me like, yeah, I could do it again. There is a lot of discipline in being the type of mother that I want to be, and it's not always easy, but it's rewarding. And he's just like seeing him and watching him grow is really, it's just cool. It's super cool. Like you make this person and you're just like, all right, I hope we vibe. But like we really get along. There's a lot of the book, which I say is my like one of my biggest joys, is set and centered around grief. And I think maybe that's the difference between like happiness and joy. Like I was able to create this joyful product out of a lot of sadness for me. And it's like I spent a lot of my life unsure what I would do with it. If it would just like be a cloud that followed me around or if I could turn it into something more. And so like while the book has like a lot of heavier, bigger issues, I was just able to like use the grief and turn it into something joyful and maybe not happy, but yeah, just something meaningful on a deeper level. Finishing a project, although you're like never really quite done, right? Like you do it and you're like, oh, like when you can surprise yourself and like you just show up for yourself in a new way that you had never done before. That's how finishing this was for me. It's like, okay, girl, like, yeah, you can do it. So do it again and do it better this time. And it's still going to be hard, but now you have like, I have a new baseline, I guess, of where I'm operating and where I want to be. So it's nice when the challenge is when I can still challenge myself. I'm a elder millennial without giving too much away. Yeah, I identify as Black. So a lot of these questions that Gen X or the younger kids today, like just get to ask so freely, like I've never, ever heard until I was an adult, like it was just assumed that like, oh, you were born a female with female sex parts. So you are going to like, men and that's what you're going to do. So that's kind of just what I did. I didn't even know that I could do other things. And then the older I get, because I went to a school that was predominantly white, I had, just all these weird like beauty things to work through and like, was I attractive and to who and to who's gay or for whom and like, for who's gays. And then, so I went to college and everyone was like, because, I didn't have a partner, they're like, oh, she's just a lesbian. So I was like, am I a lesbian? Is this what's going on with me? But then it wasn't until after college where I like became more confident in myself. And I was like, oh, okay, I'm not an ugly duckling. I just have been living in a very sheltered kind of environment. I just became more comfortable and confident in myself, and that it just allowed me to explore other people, other identities. I was just young and like figuring myself out, and I wanted to learn about myself with and through other people. But I was a late bloomer, so none of that happened in college, unfortunately. Also growing up, I got mistaken for a boy a lot. I think I had an awkward puberty time. But then in hindsight, this was also, again, just by white women. But yeah, I was just called a tomboy a lot. I was mistaken for a boy a lot. And then as I got older and I had my son and I thought about the freedom I wanted him to have, I also thought about it for myself more. Because I think as an adolescent, as a teen, it was really confusing. And I always remember feeling hurt, like people were challenging, just like my soul and my spirit, like telling me I'm this or I'm not that. Also the internet, also the youth. Gosh, I love them so much just because they're just so free and expressive. And I'm like, I need to get it together. Like I need to think about these questions more deeply. So yeah, shout out to the younger folks. Much like my gender and like sexual identity, they keep growing and evolving and changing. And I think the things and the freedom that I wanted as a younger person are just like so different than what I want now and what I see now. But I think that's cool. I think it's cool that it can keep evolving and it's not like a static thing. Even though I am like an older person, I'm like, ooh, like still figuring this stuff out. And like, maybe I'm non-binary today and tomorrow maybe I'm something else. And next week, like it could be, just Danielle 5.0. Like joy is being able to turn deep feelings like into happiness, into agency, into freedom and power while surprising yourself like along the way. I am like addicted to cupcakes and sugar. So anytime I get one, I'm like a 5-year-old kid. I'm like so happy. That's my joy. I also just really love being in water. I don't know. I have a lot of fire in my birth chart. So I think it's very like cooling and calming. Just like a little splash, a pool, the ocean. Those things bring me joy. Writing brings me joy, even if nothing happens of the writing. Reading, I love to read. Music. I was going to be cheesy and take Beyonce's like, I just make lemons out of lemonade. That's my joy. Or make lemonade. That's my joy. But yeah, sometimes it is just that simple for me. I love TikTok. And I'm like not afraid to say it. I feel it's like all the good that the internet like could be. Like it has the possibility of really just shaping humanity. But I'm always so surprised and I'm so impressed by like how clever people are, how funny people are. It's just so good. Oh yeah, I love watching the ass whooping of the Montgomery Brawl. I love the people on the boat. I love the peanut gallery. I love the swimmer. Oh, he's my favorite. Yeah, I just love the community, the protection. Truly, the ancestors came out that day. Like, what did those white men think they were going to do? Like what would have happened? And I really love. I've seen quite a few white people from the South who are like, no, that's right. Like those men deserve to get that ass open. And I love when we can just recognize that. Like, yeah, you needed to get your ass beat. Sorry. I don't know what you thought was going to happen. Feeling and emanating and expressing joy in the Black body is like not only important, it's just like paramount. It's like what we're here to do on this planet. I think sometimes we get a little lost and confused, and it's like our duty to find it, find our joy and share it. I kind of with others, but selfishly, just share it in the way that you need to share it. And that really just like honors your own self. I've been thinking about like how I want to teach Miles Black history because he's also like, he's my son, he's going to be 5. And like, that's really important to me. And that is like a major through line. And I think about like, because I listened to the album so much, Master P, when he was like, on Solange, like, we are the chosen ones, like, I get really excited to share that with him. Like, yes, these are your ancestors. These are the people you came from. Yes, there is like grief and sadness in this story, but there is just an equal, if not more, amount of joy and love and like vibrancy in just life that you are fortunate, like your soul chose to be a part of. And so I'm like really excited to share that with him. I'm just starting to introduce some of these things, but I do really want to teach him about like, yeah, you might just be a spirit in this body. And sometimes I think my dad passed when I was younger. Sometimes I'm like, Dad, is this you? Because just the way we vibe, it's very much like, if you're not my dad, like we've known each other on some plane again. So as he gets older, definitely. And I want to also, just have him explore the questions that I didn't get to as a young person. And just, think about himself as this like really special being right now. And like, what are the things that bring him joy? Like how can he honor his soul, like to the very best he can? I think the older I get, the more I realize, the more you just really understand time and how like fleeting it kind of is and how flimsy and fragile life is. So I'm really invested in finding my joy and taking care of myself and just loving as deeply and as fully as I can right now, because it just, like if life is long until it's not, it's very, everything's just so temporary. So, I mean, once at the end of my life, like my last breath, I hope I can just look back and be like, okay, now you did what you needed to do. Like you really, you lived to your fullest. I've had a lot of grief in my younger years, just like that's what my life was. And so I spent a lot of time being unhappy or just unsure of how to navigate through that grief. But when you do, if you've ever been like, depressed or super sad, when you come out of it, like, or you step onto the other side, they are sisters. And you realize like such deep grief is connected to like such a strong love. And, with like such a strong, heavy pain, like there is also like the equal joy, it's like the yin yang on the other side. If you're able to get there. And I know a lot of people aren't. I don't want to downplay like grief and depression because I know how debilitating they can be. But I think, they are very connected. And for me, I was able to find joy, I think, somehow through sifting through all that grief. It was just a lot of learning, a lot of stupid shit as a teen and young adult, a lot of enough self-sabotaging things and behaviors, and just finally you get to a point where you're like, okay, this is not working. Like, this is not going to be enough. And the things of my childhood, like writing and like music, that never left me alone. They were like, hey, we're here. Why don't you hang out with us? And then when I did, like with discipline, it like really helped me get over. I listened to everything on A Seat at the Table. Like, I've probably streamed it a million times. Like, no, I'm no joke. I'm like, or 16 million. I'm like the one pushing us over on Spotify. So anything from that album, I Saw Things I Imagined. I listen to that like all the time just to really visualize and get myself in order. And then sometimes I just like some like gangster I really will I'll like turn on some YG, or if I'm feeling like anything Kendrick, old Dr. Dre, because I'm again old. So I watched The Big Lebowski a ton. It's just so quirky to me and I love it. But I think the acting and the first half of the story is fantastic. The second half kind of falls off, but you're still like in it and invested anyways. A lot of cheesy romance. I do like romance. Being present is just, being mindful of what's happening now and somehow still honoring like what your soul needs and what you need to do And that is different for everyone. I have a lot of friends who are like, super disciplined, they have to got to be a doctor by 28. And if like, that's what like your soul needs, like by all means, but also like for those like me who are just, figuring it out each day by day and going one foot in front of the other, like that's okay too. And like, there is beauty in that. Like from the grief of my younger childhood, it's still there. It's like a hole that you just kind of learn to live with, but I can live with it much better now. But I can also honor it now in just a different way than I could as a younger person. And really moving through those emotions. Like, I hate to be like, oh, the 7 steps of grief, but really, like, it, you sit in different stages for different time periods. And I am actually really happy and like thankful that as an adult, like I'm privileged to like look back at it and see like, oh yeah, you've come a really long way from where you used to be and how you used to like hold these feelings and thoughts. I think in this God, I'm making myself feel like I'm 80, but I just feel like I've been really resilient. Like I've been really strong, and I know sometimes I didn't always want to be strong, but like, yeah, I just kept moving and going forward and trusting myself, even when or especially when I knew I had no idea what I was doing, just trusting that I would eventually get to where I needed to be.
You can find Danielle on Instagram at Novels She Wrote, honey. Novels She Wrote. Novels She Wrote.
Novels She Wrote. Yeah, well, you can find all of our people. Well, we don't have Ezra's. We'll drop Ezra's at the end of the broadcast, but we do have DK's as well, which is DK Uzla, DKUZLA. That's their Instagram handle. And yeah.
What was that song? What was that song about? Murder She Wrote.
Murder
Was it about
She
the show?
Wrote. No. No. It's a dance hall hit.
Was it about the Angela Lansbury?
No. No, it wasn't. I can.
Do you know that Angela Lansbury? I found this out. I didn't know this. So Angela Lansbury was a massive deal here in America. She wasn't a huge like. I went to the UK once, and I was like going on about how much we love Angela Lansbury, and they were like, "No, Angela Lansbury is a big deal here," but I don't think that people realize in the UK how big of a celebrity Angela Lansbury is in the United States of America. She was a massive. She hosted the Tony Awards like so many times.
Yeah.
She is. I mean, I think the big hit because Murder She Wrote was obviously a very big show here in the States, more so than it was in the UK. And then of course Beauty and the Beast, and then Angela Lansbury. Just once you're Mrs. Potts, it's a wrap. Yeah. Shout out Angela Lansbury.
Angela.
There are certain people. There are certain people who randomly all of a sudden Black folks are like, we fuck with you. Angela Lansbury is one of those people. And I think it's because all of our aunts used to watch Murder She Wrote. So because my aunts love Murder She Wrote, and it's like, oh yeah, or like, who also like Black people just randomly fucks with? Sarah Paulson. Black folks don't fuck around about Sarah Paulson.
They dig her.
We're just like, we like Sarah Paulson.
She seems like a real one. That's the vibe, I think.
We're like, whatever. We like her. Jim Carrey. Black folks are like, we like Jim Carrey.
Yeah.
I mean, I thought there's a few more who've made it in there, but also without like pandering to Black.
I think that's the thing. They don't exactly. They don't pander. They don't seem to pander. They seem to just be like straight shooters. And it's just like, what you see is what you get. And they seem pretty real about like whoever they are. I think that's one thing that folks like resonate with.
There are certain people who are trying to get the Black vote, like
just trying.
No shade. I don't know if like no shade, but there's a certain pop star who has been known to date a lot of athletes who goes by a letter in the first initial of her last name. and she may or may not be Puerto Rican and take the 7 train. This famous New Yorker has been J-Lo. Let's just J-Lo. J-Lo was like basically making like black R&B music in the beginning. You remember? What
I
was
mean,
that?
she was, but she
My
was
love
like
don't
dating.
cost a thing. If you want to think you, yes you don't. If you want to think young as I'm a, even if you're broke. And then with
I mean, but she
don't be
was
fooled
like
by the rock
sleeping
that
with
I
the
got.
hottest hip hop producer
I'm still
in the game at the time, Puff Daddy,
yeah,
who was
but and black. But there's something about people who win a sort of black approval without doing any sort of pandering to black. It's an interesting phenomenon that I wish that I had the
I do, but
sociology
I don't
skills
think
to
that's. I mean,
explore.
listen, it's not like she's some white girl. You know what I mean? Like she obviously has, she's white adjacent, and she's got her proximity to whiteness, which allows her many things for sure. But she was like, she is from the Bronx. She is, I mean, she's Puerto Rican, which means she's, part of the African diaspora, and she,
Well, not all Puerto Ricans are part of the effort. Not all Puerto Ricans are
no.
part
But
of
I mean,
the
but she is Puerto Rican, and her family lineage is from Puerto Rico. And so the influences of culture, of blackness and African culture, are ever present throughout Puerto Rico, aside from maybe a bloodline that is part of the African diaspora. But all that,
Did you ever see J-Lo on the 7 train?
I never seen her on the 7. I don't.
Not the 7. The 7
The
goes
6.
from
That's
no,
the
the
Queens.
7 goes from
Yeah,
Queens
this
to
girl. Okay,
Manhattan.
yes, the trains. She was on the 6, but
No, that was not what I was. That's not why I said that. I was just clearing it up for the people in the audience.
okay. Oh, because they
Pepper
could drag you. They're
mix.
like, oh, it's not the 7 train. I get you.
Yeah,
No, but she also, I think she was a Laker girl, and so
she was a
or
Laker
no,
girl.
she was
Wait,
a fly girl. Not
no.
I shouldn't have Laker girl. That's
Oh,
Golden Girl.
I was like,
She was a
hold
fly
on,
girl,
holiday,
which is
hold on,
even
holiday.
more black, right? And so she was
No,
on.
the fly girls are
She was on In Living Color, which was a black comedy sketch show. And so like, her proximity to blackness, it wasn't like she was like, let me go and act black for this record. Like she was like, she's been in the culture, is what I'm trying to say.
Jim Carrey doesn't really like do like
Who was
his
also
acting. Okay, I don't.
in In Living Color. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, that's why his acting like he's like kind of like he's gotten really esoteric, and I think he got like deeply religious recently. Like he went through this whole thing where he was like painting and quit acting, and then he came out and he was like, Jesus Christ is the way, and I was like,
When was that?
like last year, he went through this whole thing during the pandemic where he was like painting. He was obsessively painting pictures of Donald Trump because he like hated Donald Trump. He was infuriated. He would paint these like graphic pictures of him. And then at the end of this like soul searcher, he came out, he was like deeply Christian. And I was like, this is low-key wild. All right. Thank you all for joining us today.
On that note, on the note of Black Toy.
This episode is called Black Randomness, which, by the way, I think you and I probably have we are the definition of Black Randomness. Yeah. That is on. That's
we do it well.
On period. I want to thank our executive producer Tracy Marquez, senior producers Charlene Westbrook, producer Corey Nixon, and post producer Amelia Ritaler, and of course music by LaFemme Bear. We will see you all in the next episode of Town Hall, a Black Queer Podcast.